Why did everyone in the bar go silent when the beer hit her shirt? No one knew yet, but they'd remember that sound for the rest of their lives. The Anchor Point bar had seen its share of fights. Military town. Too much pride, too much alcohol, too many ghosts with uniforms hanging in their closets. But that night wasn't like the others. That night, a tired nurse sitting alone at the counter became something else, something the entire room would whisper about for years. The beer splashed across her gray t-shirt, dripping down over denim and pooling on the bar stool below. The man who'd done it grinned like he'd just earned applause. "Oops, my bad, sweetheart." Rodriguez, Navy SEAL, shoulders like a wall, arms the size of most men's legs, and a grin carved by arrogance and whiskey. His buddies laughed, pounding the table. The bar lights caught on their dog tags, on the polished insignia stitched into their sleeves. "This ain't a place for tourists, baby," he added, leaning in so close she could smell the burn of cheap bourbon. "Anchor Point's for warriors. You should head home." Jessica Walker didn't move, didn't speak. Her phone lay face down on the bar, a faint crack across the screen. She blinked once slowly. Then she reached for the napkins, dabbing the beer with quiet precision, like she was dressing a wound. The men laughed harder. They thought silence meant fear. It didn't. Across the room, a few veterans turned to watch, that uneasy mix of curiosity and caution passing between them. The younger ones started filming. Phones slid out of pockets like vultures circling over roadkill. Rodriguez's voice rose again, slurred but steady with dominance. "Hey, I'm talking to you." His hand clamped around her wrist. Later, when people replayed the footage frame by frame, they would say the same thing. That was the moment it changed. His hand touched her skin, and his smirk froze. Her wrist was lean but strong, veins barely visible under faint scars. One circular, old, too neat to be an accident. A bullet scar. The bartender's rag stopped mid-wipe. Conversations died. Even the jukebox seemed to stall between songs. Then movement, a blur. The next thing anyone knew, Rodriguez was face down on the bar, his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that screamed pain. The wood rattled under his weight. Jessica hadn't even stood. The whole place went dead quiet. In the corner booth, an older man set down his glass. Master Chief Fletcher, 25 years in special operations, eyes that had seen too much. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. The way she moved, too smooth, too economical, too trained. That wasn't self-defense. That was muscle memory born from survival. "Let him go," said a woman's voice. Captain Hayes, one of Rodriguez's team, regulation bun, command in every syllable. Jessica released him. No hesitation. Sat back down, picked up her phone, and exhaled slowly. "Do you have any idea who you just assaulted?" Hayes demanded. "That's a United States Navy SEAL." Jessica didn't look up. "Water, please, with ice." The bartender, Jake, hesitated before moving. Former Army Ranger. Tattoos running up both arms like old stories he couldn't erase. He'd seen 1,000 fights in this bar, but not like this. He poured her water slowly, watching her eyes, the way they never stopped moving, cataloging exits, reflections, movements. This woman wasn't scared. She was assessing. Rodriguez pushed himself upright, rubbing his wrist, cheeks burning red. "Lucky shot," he muttered. Jake set down the glass. "That wasn't luck," he said softly. Jessica took a sip. "You think not?" From a dark corner, a voice rasped. "That's Krav Maga." All eyes turned. Thompson, grizzled, 50-something, veteran's jacket faded from years of wear. The kind of man who'd seen things the rest couldn't imagine. "Not Jim Krav Maga," he added. "The kind they teach people who expect not to come home." The crowd shifted. Someone muttered "nurse" under their breath, remembering the face from the hospital. A collective exhale of disbelief spread through the bar. A nurse. A civilian. The narrative started writing itself, how she must have gotten lucky, how she'd embarrassed a SEAL by chance. Rodriguez forced a smirk. How about we make it fair then? Arm wrestling right here, no tricks. The crowd stirred. Someone cheered, phones tilted higher. Jessica didn't even glance up. No, thank you. Hayes stepped in, tone cutting, scared. Silence. Jessica looked up finally. Her green eyes found Hayes's with calm that unnerved everyone watching. Third phase of Bud S training, week 5, she said, voice steady. What's the procedure for underwater knot tying when your dive buddy blacks out? The question hit like a sniper round, specific, sharp, and entirely out of place. Hayes froze. How would you? Because the recovery position you're still teaching increases secondary drowning risk by 30%, Jessica replied. Any medic with real combat dive experience knows that. You could hear the bar breathing. Jake stopped wiping. Thompson's smirk disappeared. Rodriguez looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. You talk like you know weapons, Jake said suddenly. He pulled an unloaded Glock from beneath the counter. Field strip this. Fastest anyone here's done it is 32 seconds. Jessica stared at the weapon for a moment. Then, 23, without tools. The bartender snorted, prove it. Jessica put down her water, picked up the Glock. 15 seconds later, it lay on the counter in perfect formation. Slide, barrel, spring, frame aligned like a surgical tray. Jake's jaw tightened. 15.4. The bar fell utterly silent. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Rodriguez's smirk was gone. Hayes's confidence cracked. From the corner, Thompson whispered, "You smell like death." Everyone turned toward him, uneasy. Not hospital death, he continued. The other kind, the kind that never washes off. Dimitri, a massive private contractor near the dartboard, stood up, his shadow stretching across the room. Big talk from little nurse, he sneered. In my country, we teach women respect. Marcus, the bouncer, started to move, but Fletcher raised a hand. Let it play, he said quietly. Dimitri stepped forward, arms swinging toward Jessica's shoulder, fast, confident, brutal. The kind of move meant to dominate. Jessica barely moved. Her chair creaked, a blur of motion, and then Dimitri was on the ground gasping, windless, staring up at the ceiling like he'd fallen through the world. She hadn't even stood. The silence was different now, not disbelief, fear. The door opened, cold air swept in. Colonel Brooks entered, gray at the temples, medals lined like ghosts of old battles. The kind of man who didn't walk into rooms, rooms adjusted around him. What the hell going on here? Nobody answered. He looked at Dimitri on the floor, then at Jessica, who sat perfectly still, eyes calm, hand back on her glass. What unit taught you that takedown? He asked. Jessica didn't answer. Because that's not CQC, that's something else. In the corner, Fletcher was on his phone now, murmuring in tones that carried authority. His expression had changed. Recognition, fear. Everyone who serves has a call sign, Rodriguez said suddenly, his pride clawing for relevance. So what's yours? Come on. You talk like one of us, prove it. Jessica's eyes flicked from him to Hayes to the colonel. Then she exhaled. I don't have one. Laughter broke the tension, but only for a second. Everyone has a call sign, Hayes said sharply. Don't insult us. Outside, the screech of tires broke the night. A black SUV halted, headlights slicing through the bar's front window. The door swung open. Admiral Morrison walked in, civilian clothes, but no mistaking him. His presence filled the room before he even spoke. The laughter stopped instantly. His gaze swept the room, landing on Jessica. The expression on his face changed from confusion to disbelief, to something like grief. Say it, Rodriguez said again, voice shaking now for reasons he didn't understand. Say your call sign or admit you're lying. Jessica stood, finally. She was smaller than all of them, but the room seemed to bend toward her. Viper 1. The beer bottle in Rodriguez's hand slipped and shattered against the floor. The sound, sharp, final, echoed through the stunned silence. Morrison's breath caught. Hayes's hand covered her mouth. Fletcher took a step back, color draining from his face. Even Brooks staggered. Thompson whispered it like a prayer, "The ghost sniper." The air thickened with realization. Rodriguez stumbled backward. "That's impossible, you died at Blackwater." Admiral Morrison took 3 slow steps forward and did something no one had ever seen a flag officer do. He knelt. "Master Chief Viper," he said softly, "I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you." The entire bar froze in collective awe. Phones trembled in hands. Streams blinked live across social media. In seconds, millions would see it. The moment a weary ER nurse was revealed as the deadliest woman in modern military history. Jessica Walker didn't move, didn't speak. Her shoulders squared, eyes steady, hands trembling only slightly as if some invisible weight had finally settled back where it belonged. And in that silence, where even the air felt reverent, every soul in the Anchor Point bar began to understand that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who has nothing left to prove. No one breathed. The sound of that bottle breaking still hung in the air, fragile as glass dust. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause mid-rotation. Jessica, Viper 1, stood in silence, her calm radiating through the panic. It wasn't the calm of arrogance or defiance. It was the stillness of someone who'd seen death so many times that it had stopped surprising her. Rodriguez didn't move. His knuckles whitened around empty air where the bottle had been. His brain couldn't process what his eyes confirmed. The woman he'd mocked, touched, humiliated, had just spoken a name that lived in military legend and myth. Master Chief Viper. The ghost sniper. The operative who wasn't supposed to exist. Hayes's voice cracked. "No, that can't be. You died at Blackwater." Jessica didn't answer. Fletcher whispered, barely audible, "She didn't die, she disappeared." The Admiral's voice carried over the stunned silence. "No, she was listed KIA. We buried an empty coffin." The whispers began to spread. Blackwater, Task Force Black, the failed op that wasn't supposed to fail. Every person who'd ever worn a uniform had heard fragments of it, but nobody knew the truth, until now. Admiral Morrison straightened, emotion hard in his jawline. "Everyone in this room phones off, now." Screens went dark one by one as if obeying instinct. But they all knew, whatever this was, the world outside already knew too. Jessica's green eyes flicked toward him. "It doesn't matter, Admiral, they've already seen enough." He hesitated, then, "Not enough to understand." She exhaled, the weariness finally breaking through. "Understanding, never been the goal, sir, only survival." The Admiral nodded once slow. Still, they deserved to hear it. It wasn't an order, but it carried the weight of one. Jessica's gaze drifted across the room. Every face was locked on her. Soldiers, veterans, civilians, each trying to reconcile the woman before them with the ghost of the stories that haunted the quiet corners of the Navy's past. When she spoke, her voice was low, roughened by memory. Blackwater wasn't a mission. It was a mistake that kept breathing. No one moved. Intel said we were pulling out 73 civilians from an NGO compound. Aid workers, families, women, children, minimal enemy resistance, standard extraction. She paused. Intel was wrong. Morrison closed his eyes, jaw clenched. Fletcher looked down, they'd both known. Jessica's voice hardened. 300 Taliban fighters, mortars, machine guns, anti-air. They waited until we landed before they closed the trap. 6 of us went in. 5 died in the first 15 minutes. The weight of that silence pressed on every chest. Rodriguez swallowed hard, the earlier swagger gone. "And you held the compound." Jessica nodded slowly. "For 16 hours. She didn't blink as she said it, didn't dramatize it. It was a statement of fact, not pride. 73 civilians. I moved them from room to room. Ammo ran out in the first 2 hours. After that, whatever we had, I remember thinking how quiet the mountains got between explosions. The room listened like a congregation. I carried 2 children the last 200 meters to the evac bird. One of them, Rashid, was 8. His sister, 6. She was bleeding. He kept telling me he'd be brave so I wouldn't cry. He thought I was afraid. Her voice faltered for the first time, barely perceptible, but Fletcher noticed. So did Hayes. Jessica stared into her glass as if she could still see the desert in the reflection. They made it out. The others didn't. Morrison spoke quietly. You were hit. 67 wounds, 2 deaths on the medevac. You weren't supposed to live. I didn't, she said simply. Viper 1 died that day. Someone else came back. Her words hung heavy, echoing off wood and silence. Thompson, still sitting near the corner, whispered, You traded a rifle for a stethoscope. Jessica looked up at him, eyes unreadable, seemed fair. The irony cut through the heaviness, faint but human. A few in the room exhaled quietly. The Admiral's voice dropped, weighted with remorse. We failed you. We failed your team. I signed off on that mission. You weren't supposed to survive because you weren't supposed to be there. Jessica shook her head. We were exactly where we needed to be. Someone had to be. The room stayed still. No one dared interrupt. Finally, Hayes spoke, her earlier arrogance replaced by awe. You were the only woman to finish Delta selection. Not something I planned to put on a resume. Hayes swallowed. And the reports about your sniper record, 127 confirmed kills. Jessica's eyes flicked up, sharp as a knife. Don't quote numbers you can't verify. The truth doesn't live in numbers. It lives in what they cost. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a phone buzzed on the bar, hers. A quiet vibration, subtle but unmistakable. Jessica picked it up, screen glowing blue with an encryption seal only a handful of people in the world could recognize. Her face changed. Blackjack, she said softly into the receiver. Morrison froze, Langley. She didn't nod, didn't deny it, just listened. When, she whispered. Pause. 3 days. Her grip tightened. How many? Whatever she heard next drained the color from her face. When she ended the call, the silence felt colder. Rashid, she said finally, they took him. The word they made everyone in the room tense automatically. The Taliban, he's 18 now, runs a school for girls with his sister Amira. They grabbed him 3 days ago. They're going to execute him, publicly, in 72 hours. Fletcher's glass hit the table too hard. Jesus Christ. They're calling it revenge, Jessica continued. They want the ghost of Blackwater to watch another family die. Morrison's voice was barely above a whisper, unless the ghost comes back. Jessica didn't answer. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes, those same quiet, patient eyes, seemed to shift focus inward, calculating something no one else could see. You can't, Rodriguez said, stepping forward, voice cracking between respect and desperation. You're not in the field anymore. You're a civilian. You save lives in hospitals, not war zones. Jessica looked at him. You think I chose emergency medicine by accident? He blinked. Every bullet wound, every trauma case, every time someone's bleeding out on my table, I see them. My team, those kids, the ones I couldn't save, it's how I pay the debt. Her tone wasn't angry. It was something deeper, tired acceptance. Thompson's voice rasped from the corner. The scales never balance, not for us. Jessica met his gaze. No, but we keep trying. Hayes's voice broke the silence. What do you need? Jessica turned slowly. The shift in tone from suspicion to solidarity was palpable. I need to make a call, she said softly, and then I need to disappear. Morrison nodded. Whatever you need, full support, unofficially. Officially, Jessica added, Viper 1 stays dead. Understood. Fletcher stepped forward, reaching into his pocket. He placed a small, worn coin on the bar, not shiny, not ceremonial, used, scratched, the kind that had been through sand and fire. Task Force Black, he said. My brother was there. Sergeant First Class Mickey Fletcher. You knew him as Rodeo. Jessica stared at the coin. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. I remember, she whispered. He carried extra morphine for wounded kids, said it was the one thing worth running out of ammo for. Fletcher's eyes shone, but he blinked it away. You brought him home, he said quietly. I tried. You did. The weight of those two words hung like prayer. Outside, headlights flashed across the window, multiple vehicles now. Black SUVs, sedans, the kind that don't belong to civilians. Jessica glanced toward them, then at Morrison. Guess I don't have much time. He nodded once. We'll handle the cleanup. Rodriguez stepped forward again, not aggressive this time but humbled. Ma'am, Jessica, She stopped him with a faint smile. Don't apologize, you couldn't have known. I should have. She shook her head. No, you just saw what the world taught you to see. He lowered his eyes. But maybe, she said, next time you'll look closer. She started toward the door. Wait, Hayes said suddenly. You can't do this alone, not again. Jessica paused, hand on the handle. I've been alone for 10 years. But Rashid isn't alone, Jessica said softly. He's got his sister, his students, people worth saving. Morrison's voice followed her. Then you'll have support this time, deniable but real. She nodded once. Then let's make sure everyone comes home. And then she was gone. The door closed with a soft click. Inside, the room remained frozen in that same stunned reverence, like they'd witnessed something sacred. One by one, phones were deleted, videos wiped, conversations erased, no orders needed, just understanding. The Anchor Point bar, once a place of laughter and ego, had become something else, a memory too heavy to share, too powerful to forget. Outside, Jessica sat in her car, engine idling. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. For 10 full seconds, she allowed the mask to drop. Her breath hitched. The tremor in her hands came back. Then the phone buzzed again. Package incoming, the message read. She opened it, encrypted intel, satellite photos, coordinates. A compound in eastern Afghanistan, the same mountains where she'd buried her past. Her jaw tightened. It was impossible. One woman couldn't pull it off. Not anymore. Then her phone rang again. Fletcher. You've got 12 operators ready, he said without preamble. All volunteers, Tier 1 experience, transports being arranged. Morrison's handling clearance. Brooks is running interference. Jessica closed her eyes, whispering into the quiet, why? Because, Fletcher said softly, you saved 73 people when no one believed you could. Because you showed us tonight that strength isn't loud, it's steady. And because it's time you stopped fighting alone. The line clicked off. Jessica looked in the rearview mirror. Her reflection stared back, a tired nurse, and something else beneath it. The warrior who'd refused to die. She put the car in gear. The headlights cut through the night, slicing the silence. Rashid, she whispered, hold on, I'm coming. The engine roared to life. And for the first time in 10 years, Viper 1 was back on mission. The airfield didn't exist. At least, that's what the official records said. Just another nameless strip of asphalt in the middle of nowhere, silent, wind-blown, forgotten. The kind of place used for operations that never made it into reports, where planes took off without manifests and landed without history. It was past midnight when the cargo plane touched down. No lights, no insignia, No sound except the groan of metal and the whisper of desert wind. Jessica stepped onto the tarmac. The smell hit her first: jet fuel, sand, sweat, and memory. A decade hadn't changed that scent. It was the smell of the life she'd buried. Her boots crunched against gravel. She wore no insignia, no name tag. Just plain multicam fatigues and an expression that looked somewhere between haunted and resolute. A shadow moved ahead, then a voice. "Welcome back to the sandbox, Fletcher." He stepped forward, grin faint but real. Same rugged frame, same calm presence, but there was something else now, a quiet reverence. Behind him, 11 others waited. All shapes, all scars. Rodriguez and Hayes among them. Operators who'd chosen to defy orders for something greater than pride. Jessica studied them, her eyes softening. "You shouldn't be here." Rodriguez smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Neither should you." For a long moment, no one spoke. Just the hum of engines cooling behind them. Then Jessica's voice cut through the stillness. "Brief me." They moved into the hangar. Inside, a makeshift operations table, wood planks on oil drums, was covered with maps, photographs, and satellite imagery. A laptop projected grainy images of a compound nestled in the jagged folds of a mountain valley. Fletcher pointed. "Rashid and his sister are being held here. Northeast sector, 20 clicks from our current position. Compounds fortified. High walls. Multiple guard towers. Early warning posts on both ridges." Jessica leaned closer, eyes scanning, mind already calculating. "They've learned from Blackwater." "Yeah," Hayes said. "Intel confirms. They've been broadcasting for days, taunting you by name." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Good, that means they'll be expecting me." "Which makes it suicide," Rodriguez muttered. "They want you walking into a kill zone." Jessica looked up, expression unreadable. "Then we give them what they want." The team exchanged uneasy glances. "You're not serious," Hayes said. "Walking in alone, that's not a plan, that's a death wish." Jessica traced a finger along the map. "They built the trap expecting an assault. Heavy air, multi-angle entry, predictable response. They think we'll do what we always do. We won't." She marked positions as she spoke, the pen moving with quiet authority. "They'll see one operator coming across open ground, unarmed, alone, all attention fixed there. While they're watching me," she circled another area, "you move here. And here. You'll already be inside before they realize they've been surrounded." "Classic diversion," Fletcher murmured. "Except this time the bait's volunteering." Jessica didn't respond. Her focus was absolute, tactical, cold. Rodriguez frowned. "You're not seriously thinking of walking through 100 rifles with no cover." Her eyes flicked to his. "You've seen me move, think I need cover." A faint ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the group, but no one truly relaxed. The air in the hangar buzzed with that old, unspoken truth. Bravery and insanity were cousins separated only by luck. 72 hours, Fletcher said. "After that, the executions go public." "Then we move in 48, Jessica replied. "We'll need prep time, gear, and comms blackout, everything off-grid." Hayes nodded, tapping on the laptop. "I'll handle encrypted comms and drone surveillance. 2 hours of night coverage before we risk detection." "Good," Jessica said. "Rodriguez logistics, weapons, transport, extraction routes." He raised an eyebrow. "Taking orders now, huh?" "Only if you want to make it home." He grinned. "Roger that." As assignments fell into place, Fletcher watched Jessica quietly. The transformation was unsettling. The tired ER nurse was gone. In her place stood the operator he'd heard about in whispers, precise, efficient, dangerous. But beneath it he saw something more human, something breaking and rebuilding at the same time. "Still hate coffee?" he asked softly when the others dispersed. Jessica's lips twitched, "Only when it tastes like sand." They shared a small laugh, brief, fragile, human. Then she went back to the map. "You know," Fletcher said after a moment, "when we met at that bar, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. A myth, a ghost, or just someone trying to disappear. And now," he studied her, "now I think you're trying to come back to life." Jessica didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence spoke enough. Outside, the desert wind howled against the hangar walls. Somewhere, a generator coughed. The night felt alive, heavy with the ghosts of every decision that had led them there. By dawn, the team was ready. 12 operators, one mission, no acknowledgement. They loaded weapons in silence. M4s, suppressed carbines, sidearms, all stripped of serials. Jessica checked each with the care of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Rodriguez watched her, shaking his head. "I still can't believe this. Yesterday you were cleaning beer off your shirt. Now you're leading a black op." Jessica glanced at him. "Yesterday I was pretending to be someone else." He nodded slowly. "Guess we've all been pretending." The convoy rolled out before sunrise. Unmarked trucks. No flags, no chatter, just purpose. The desert stretched endless ahead. Pale gold under the faint light. Mountains rising like scars in the distance. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, eyes scanning the horizon. Fletcher drove. "You ever think about what comes after?" he asked quietly. She frowned. "After what?" "All of it, the missions, the ghosts, the ones you couldn't save." Her gaze drifted toward the rising sun. "Every day." "And I keep showing up," she said. "That's all any of us can do." Fletcher nodded. "You ever think maybe that's enough?" She gave a faint smile. "Not yet." They drove the rest of the way in silence. At base camp, a small collection of tents blended into the rocky terrain. The operators moved with practiced efficiency, setting up overwatch points and communications. Inside the main tent, Jessica studied a live satellite feed. The compound sprawled like a scar against the desert, rectangular walls, guard towers, two main gates. She pointed at one corner. "That's our breach, maintenance tunnel. Looks sealed, but it's hollow. We'll use it for extraction once the hostages are secure." Hayes zoomed in on the northern perimeter. "Thermal shows 50 to 60 armed. Could be more inside. Heavy weapons in the towers." Jessica nodded. "Good, they'll be focused there. That's our advantage." Rodriguez snorted. "Your definition of advantage scares me." She smirked faintly. "It's kept me alive this long." Hours passed. Plans were refined. Weapons checked. The air filled with the quiet ritual of soldiers preparing for something that might not have a tomorrow. When the sun dipped behind the mountains, Jessica stepped outside. The sky burned orange, fading to violet. For a long time she just stood there, staring at the horizon. Fletcher joined her. "You good?" She hesitated. "Define good." He smiled softly. "Alive." Jessica looked down at her hands. Scars, calluses, lives saved and lost etched into skin. "Barely." "Still counts." She turned to him. "You ever wonder why some of us survive when better people do?" Fletcher's expression darkened. "Every damn day." "I used to think survival meant I was strong," she said quietly. "Now I think it just means I haven't finished paying." He exhaled. "Maybe this mission settles the debt." She shook her head. "Debts like ours don't settle, they just shift." Night fell. Under cover of darkness, the team checked gear one last time. 12 operators dressed in silence, each movement precise. Jessica adjusted her vest, then reached into her duffel. Her fingers brushed against something small, metal, round, familiar. Fletcher's challenge coin. She slipped it into her pocket, a silent promise. The convoy rolled again. No headlights, only moonlight and instinct. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley, the same valley that had buried her a decade earlier. Through her scope, Jessica saw it all. The towers, the floodlights, the silhouettes of men patrolling the perimeter. It was almost identical to Blackwater. Different place, same ghosts. Fletcher knelt beside her. You sure about this? Jessica's voice was calm. They want the ghost of Blackwater. And let's give them one. The plan was madness and brilliance intertwined. She would walk straight into the trap, unarmed, alone, a phantom resurrected to bait an army. The others would move under cover, invisible in the dark. It depended on timing, coordination, and faith. Faith that everyone would do their job perfectly, that the universe would spare them one more day. Jessica rose, pulling the scarf over her hair. Her eyes caught the faint glint of starlight reflecting off the sand. She whispered not to anyone in particular, 16 hours, 73 lives, maybe one more. Fletcher's voice came through her earpiece. All teams green. Jessica took a breath, deep and steady. Then she stepped into the open. A single figure walking across the valley floor, the dawn barely touching the horizon. The radio crackled softly, Hayes's whisper, "Viper, you're visible." "I know," Jessica replied. And with each step, she shed the weight of her years in hiding, of quiet shifts in sterile hospital halls, of the endless guilt that had chased her through dreams. The woman who had once died in Blackwater was walking again, toward fire, toward redemption, toward a promise made to a frightened boy who'd once told her, "I'll be brave." She smiled faintly. "Your turn to be brave, kid," she whispered to the wind. Ahead, the compound walls loomed larger with every step. Behind her, 12 rifles followed her movement, 12 hearts synchronized to one impossible plan. The huntress was walking back into hell. And this time, hell had no idea who it was waiting for. Why wasn't she afraid? That question echoed in Fletcher's head as he watched Jessica cross the open valley, a lone figure against a horizon turning the color of ash and gold. Every step looked deliberate, measured, too calm for someone walking into the sights of 100 rifles. The dust rose around her boots like ghosts stirred from sleep. "Viper is in the open," Hayes whispered through comms. 70 meters to outer perimeter. "Copy," Fletcher said. His voice was steady but his heart hammered. From his ridge position he could see everything through the scope, her profile outlined in pale light, the shimmer of heat coming off the sand, the movement on the walls ahead. Fighters shifting, rifles adjusting. The Taliban guards had seen her. A ripple moved along the compound wall. Excitement, confusion, disbelief. The ghost of Blackwater, alive and walking into their trap. Inside the command post, the warlord in charge barked orders in Pashto. His men scrambled, the memory of a decade-old humiliation bleeding back into the moment. They'd waited 10 years for this day, for this woman, for revenge that would restore their pride. Jessica stopped 20 feet short of the gate, hands visible, shoulders square. She spoke in a clear voice, carried by the wind. "I'm here for Rashid and Amira. Let the others go." A murmur rippled behind the wall. Then a figure stepped forward, the commander, face scarred from old burns, eyes cold. He lifted a radio mic and laughed into it, the sound echoing through loudspeakers fixed along the towers. "You think you can bargain, Ghost?" His English was broken but venom sharp. "You killed my brothers, you took my honor, today you watch them die." Jessica's expression didn't change. "Then I guess we're both running out of family." The commander sneered. "You walk into our home with nothing, no gun, no armor, you expect mercy." "Not mercy," she said softly. 17 seconds. He frowned. "What?" 17 seconds before this place belongs to me." For a second the commander froze, caught between rage and confusion. Then he raised his rifle, pointing it directly at her head. From the ridgelines, 12 operators lay prone behind rocks and scrub. Fingers tightened on triggers. Fletcher's voice murmured in her ear, calm and surgical. "On your mark, Viper." Jessica's voice came steady. 16:15. The commander's jaw clenched. "Shoot her." Muzzles flashed, but the bullets never reached her. The first round of shots came from the shadows above, Rodriguez's team engaging in perfect synchrony. Suppressed fire cracked through the dawn, each shot a whisper of precision. Tower guards dropped before they could even aim. Inside the compound, chaos erupted. Men shouted, scrambled for cover, tripped over each other as invisible death picked them off one by one. Jessica was already moving. She dropped to one knee, rolling left, drawing a compact pistol from under her vest. 3 shots, 3 men down. The movement was fluid, mechanical, terrifying in its economy. The commander ducked behind a truck, screaming orders no one could hear over the storm of gunfire. Outer perimeter collapsing, Hayes reported. We're in. Fletcher's team advanced, breaking through the maintenance tunnel Jessica had marked earlier. Dim shapes flowed through dust and darkness, silent as ghosts. Jessica sprinted forward, sliding behind the burned-out remains of an armored vehicle. Bullets tore into the metal, sparks raining across her shoulders. 10 years since Blackwater, and yet her body remembered. Every movement automatic, honed, perfect. But this time felt different. She wasn't fighting to survive. She was fighting to save. Her voice came low over comms. Breach secure. North side clear, Fletcher replied. We've got your flank. Jessica nodded to no one, eyes scanning. The chaos inside was spreading fast, fighters turning on each other, some retreating, others firing blindly. She could almost feel the panic building. Fear, she thought, was louder than bullets. She moved through the gate, stepping over bodies. Inside, smoke curled through narrow corridors, heat thick as breath. The smell of cordite and dust mixed with something darker, old blood, fear, decay. In the main courtyard, she found what she was looking for. A heavy steel door, padlocked, guarded by 2 men too young to remember what she'd done to their predecessors. They hesitated when they saw her. Jessica didn't. 2 shots, quick, merciful. The lock shattered under a silence burst. Inside, the air was cold, damp. She flicked on a small tactical light. The beam caught faces, 14 of them, huddled, shivering, eyes wide. Rashid. Older now, taller, but she recognized him instantly. He blinked into the light. No, he whispered, you can't be real. Jessica knelt. I told you I'd watch over you. Tears broke down his dirt-smeared face. They said you were dead. Not dead, she said gently, just late. She cut the chains with bolt cutters from her vest, motion sharp, efficient. Can everyone walk? Most can, he said, helping his sister to her feet. She's hurt but alive. Jessica turned toward the door. Stay behind me, we move now. Outside, the fight was still raging, but it was a different kind of fight now. Precision, control. Fletcher's team was everywhere at once, dismantling the stronghold from the inside out. Every shot placed, every movement coordinated. This was what professionalism looked like when mixed with purpose. Rodriguez's voice came through the headset. Extraction route clear, 2 minutes to the trucks. Copy, Jessica replied, moving. They reached the courtyard just as another explosion ripped through the far wall. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The hostages flinched, but Jessica kept them moving, her voice low, steady. You're safe, keep going, eyes forward. Rashid stumbled once and she caught him by the arm. For a heartbeat they locked eyes, the boy from her nightmares, alive, grown, still brave. He whispered, I told you I'd be brave. You were, she said, and something inside her cracked open. They broke into the open air. The ridgeline loomed ahead, and beyond it, salvation, the waiting trucks, the narrow trail leading back to extraction. But fate wasn't finished testing them. Movement flickered to Jessica's right. A shadow broke from behind a vehicle. A boy, no more than 16, face blood-streaked, hands trembling around an old AK-47. He shouted something she couldn't hear. Jessica froze, her weapon lifted, but so did her heart. The others hadn't seen him yet. One trigger squeeze from her would end it. but the image struck her like a memory. Another child, 10 years ago, clutching his wounded sister, whispering courage he didn't feel. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Time slowed. The boy's hands shook, his eyes were wide, terrified, not hate, not ideology, just fear. Jessica lowered her weapon. "Go home," she said quietly in Pashto. "Go home to your mother." He hesitated, the barrel wavered. Around her, Fletcher's voice shouted in her earpiece, "Viper, take the shot." She didn't. For a full 5 seconds, they stared at each other across 20 feet of dust and silence. Then the boy's weapon dropped. He turned and ran. Jessica exhaled, all clear. A pause crackled through comms. Then Fletcher's voice came again, softer, "Copy, Viper." They reached the vehicles. Rodriguez was already behind the wheel of one truck, yelling, "Move, move." The hostages climbed in. Amira's hands shook as she clutched her brother. Jessica counted each one, 13, 14. "All accounted for," she said. "Then we're leaving," Fletcher replied. Engines roared to life. The convoy tore away from the compound as explosions echoed behind them, charges set to erase every trace of what had happened. No one spoke during the ride. The only sound was breathing and the endless rattle of gravel under tires. Jessica sat beside Rashid, staring out the window as the compound vanished into smoke. 10 years ago, she'd left that valley broken and bleeding. Now she left it alive, but something deeper in her shifted, like a circle closing. Rashid reached out, gripping her hand. His palm was rough, the way a man becomes after building something with his own hands. "You came back," he said simply. "I promised," she replied. He smiled faintly. "My students, they tell stories about you. They call you the woman who wouldn't die." Jessica's eyes glistened. "I almost did, but sometimes living hurts more." He didn't understand, not fully, but he squeezed her hand anyway. The horizon burned orange as the first light of day crept across the mountains. The trucks bounced over the last ridge, and below them 2 helicopters waited, silent, rotors idling. The team moved quickly, civilians loaded, weapons secured. Jessica stood aside, counting again. 13, 14, everyone alive. When the last door slammed shut, she turned toward the valley. Smoke still rose in thin ribbons from the ruins below. Rodriguez approached. His face was streaked with dirt, his eyes red. He gave her a crooked smile. "No casualties, everyone home, you did it." She shook her head. "We did it." He hesitated, then saluted, a crisp, perfect salute, no bravado left. She returned it. As the helicopters lifted, wind whipped her hair loose. Sand swirled around her boots. Fletcher's voice came from behind her. "You could have shot that kid." "I know. Why didn't you?" Jessica looked at him, her eyes hollow but alive. "Because somebody has to break the pattern." Fletcher nodded slowly. "Maybe that's how wars really end." She watched the last helicopter disappear into the dawn. The noise faded, leaving only silence, and the beating of her heart, steady again for the first time in years. For once, the silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like peace trying to find its way back. Why was it so quiet after victory? Jessica sat on the loading ramp of the helicopter, her boots dangling inches above the desert floor. The engine had stopped hours ago. The sun had already climbed high, casting long, blistering shadows across the forward base. But she couldn't move, not yet. The others had gone inside, Rodriguez arguing logistics, Hayes handling comms cleanup, Fletcher debriefing with Morrison over a secure channel. The hum of life resumed around her, but inside her head there was only silence. The kind that followed battle, the kind that stripped away all noise until only truth remained. In that silence, she saw faces again. Her team from Blackwater. The civilians they'd saved. The boy who had run instead of firing. And Rashid's words, "You came back." Jessica exhaled slowly. She'd come back, yes, but not as the same woman. Viper One had returned to the field, but she wasn't the predator anymore. She was something else, something that understood the weight of mercy. Footsteps approached, heavy, unhurried. Fletcher. He stopped beside her, dropping a canteen onto the metal ramp with a clank. "You look like you could use this." Jessica smiled faintly. "Does it taste like sand?" "Worse," he said. "It's coffee." That earned a small laugh. Soft, fragile, the kind you let escape when you're too tired to hold it in. He sat beside her, the silence between them comfortable. Two ghosts catching their breath in daylight. "They're saying it's one of the cleanest extractions in years," he said finally. "No friendly losses. Every civilian accounted for. Even Langley's impressed." "Langley, always impressed when something doesn't leak," she murmured. He smiled. "You know what I mean. You did good, Jess." Her eyes didn't move from the horizon. "I did what I should have done 10 years ago." "Still good." She didn't answer. For a while, neither did he. The wind filled the space where words couldn't reach. Finally, Jessica broke the silence. "Do you ever stop hearing it?" "Hearing what?" "The echoes, the screams, the gunfire that doesn't exist anymore but never really leaves." Fletcher looked down at his hands. "No, but after a while they get quieter. Like the ocean, you stop fearing the waves and just listen." Jessica nodded, her expression unreadable. "I envy that." "You'll get there." She turned to him. "You think redemption works like that? That it's something you can earn by surviving long enough?" He shrugged. "I think redemption isn't earned, it's accepted." She frowned. "What if you can't accept it?" "Then it waits." Jessica looked back at the horizon. The wind tugged at her hair. "I've kept it waiting a long time." He didn't push. He just sat there with her, letting her words hang in the dry air. Minutes passed before Hayes appeared at the hangar entrance. "Morrison wants to see you, says it's urgent." Jessica nodded, stood, and stretched the stiffness from her shoulders. Inside, the command tent buzzed with quiet urgency. Monitors glowed. Radios whispered. Morrison stood near the center table, his posture rigid, his face carved in stone. When Jessica entered, he looked up, and for the first time in years, she saw something like relief in his eyes. "Mission report confirms all hostages secured," he said. "No civilian casualties, no operational exposure." "Then it's over," she said. He shook his head. "It's never over." She tilted her head, meaning. He handed her a folder. Inside, grainy satellite images. A convoy, vehicles heading west from the destroyed compound. "Remnants," he said. "You cut the head off, but the body's still moving, and they know who did it." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Let them know." "That's not how this works anymore," Morrison said. "You're not in uniform. You're not in any system that can protect you. You're a civilian." "I've been a ghost for 10 years," she said. "I'll manage." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You saved lives, Jessica. You ended something dark. Don't throw that away chasing what's left." She met his gaze, steady. "I'm not chasing them. I'm making sure they never chase anyone else." Morrison sighed. "You always were impossible to debrief." "Occupational hazard." He smiled faintly, then his tone softened. "The world's different now, Jess. Wars are fought on screens and wires. You won't find peace on the battlefield." She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not looking for peace. I'm looking for balance." He hesitated, then nodded. "Then find it. Just don't lose yourself again." Jessica closed the folder. "No promises." As she left the tent, Fletcher intercepted her near the vehicles. "That look on your face," he said. "Please tell me you're not going back out there." "Not yet," she said, "but if they come, I won't run." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You've earned the right to stop running." She almost smiled. "You think so?" "I know so." They stood there in silence until Rodriguez called from across the lot. Bird, fueled. Civilians ready for transport. Jessica walked toward the transport, where Rashid and Amira waited near the ramp. Both looked cleaner now, bandaged, fed, safe. The transformation in them was striking. When Rashid saw her, his face lit up. "They're taking us to the embassy, then to the States." "That's good," she said. "You'll be safe there." He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn pendant, a piece of twisted metal shaped like a wing. "They found this in the compound. Said it belonged to someone who died protecting us 10 years ago." Jessica froze. She knew that piece. She'd cut it from her flight harness after the crash at Blackwater. She took it, fingers trembling. "It was mine." Rashid smiled. "Then maybe it's time it went home." She wanted to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. All she could manage was a nod. Amira stepped forward, her voice soft. "You gave me my brother back." Jessica's eyes glistened. "No," she whispered. "He gave himself back, you both did." The siblings embraced her, brief but full of everything words couldn't express. When they pulled away, Rashid said, "You'll visit us, won't you?" Jessica smiled faintly. "I'm not good at visits." "Then we'll find you." "Maybe," she said and stepped back. "Maybe one day." They boarded. The engines started. Jessica watched until the helicopter rose, the rotor wash blowing dust across her boots. Then they were gone. She stood alone again, something she'd always been good at, but this time it didn't feel empty. Rodriguez approached, wiping sweat from his neck. "So what now? You just disappear again." She thought for a moment. Maybe disappear somewhere quieter. "Like a hospital." Jessica looked at him, smiling slightly. "Yeah, maybe a hospital. Guess people still need saving." "Always." Fletcher joined them, holding out something small, her old dog tags. "Thought you might want these back." She stared at the metal for a long moment. "They belong to someone who's gone." "Maybe not," he said. Jessica took them, turning them over in her hand. The name still faintly legible through the scratches, J. Reeve, Viper 1. She looped the chain around her wrist instead of her neck. A reminder, not an identity. Fletcher's voice softened. "You know, I keep thinking about what you said to that kid in the compound." "What about it?" "You told him to go home." "Yeah. Maybe you should too." Jessica looked past him at the horizon, the same desert that had once buried her, now stretching out like freedom. "Maybe I will," she said quietly. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure where home was anymore. They spent the rest of the day breaking down camp, loading what little evidence remained. By nightfall, the desert was empty again, clean, silent, unmarked. The kind of silence that follows a chapter closing. Before boarding the last truck, Jessica walked out a few paces and knelt in the sand. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the coin Fletcher had given her. Task Force Black. Worn, scarred, burned smooth in places. She pressed it into the ground. "For you," she whispered, "for all of you." The wind picked up, covering the mark almost immediately. Fletcher watched from a distance but said nothing. Some moments didn't need witnesses. As she stood, a faint smile touched her lips, sad, soft, almost peaceful. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from ghosts. She was walking with them. The truck door slammed behind her. Engines rumbled. The convoy turned toward the horizon. Inside, Rodriguez cracked open an MRE and smirked. "So, Doc Reeve, you ever gonna tell us what's next?" Jessica leaned back, eyes half closed. "Sleep. Maybe a shower, then maybe a flight somewhere with no sand." Hayes grinned. "That's a tall order." "Then maybe just the shower." They laughed, tired, genuine. The kind of laugh that came when people realized they were still alive and didn't quite believe it. As night swallowed the desert again, Jessica stared out the window, her reflection ghosted against the dark glass. The call sign Viper 1 still echoed in her head, but it no longer felt like a weight. Maybe it wasn't the name of who she was. Maybe it was the name of who she'd learned to become. A protector, a survivor, a witness to both the cost and the grace of choosing mercy. The stars blurred into streaks as the truck rumbled on, and in that motion, something inside her began to settle. She whispered softly to herself, a thought she'd never dared to believe until now. Sometimes the only way to win a war is to stop fighting. And for the first time since Blackwater, Jessica Reeve, Viper 1, closed her eyes and slept. Why did silence feel heavier at home than it ever did in war? Jessica stood in the center of her apartment, surrounded by stillness that felt too clean, too neat. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of a wall clock, ordinary sounds that somehow made her uneasy. The desert dust was gone, the smell of fuel and blood replaced by antiseptic air freshener. She should have felt safe, but safety didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like confinement. She dropped her duffel on the floor. Inside were reminders of both lives, a stethoscope, a field knife, her dog tags wrapped around a tourniquet, tools for saving life and surviving it. Her phone buzzed on the counter, unknown number. She stared at it for a long time before answering. Reeve. The voice on the other end was warm, uncertain. Jessica, it's Rashid. Her chest tightened. You made it. We did, he said, a smile in his tone. They placed us in a safe community near Virginia. The embassy helped. Amira's already teaching again. That's good, she said softly. You sound different. I think I am, he said. You were right, surviving doesn't mean we're broken. It means we still have work to do. Jessica smiled faintly. You've grown up. I had a good example, he said. I wanted to thank you again for everything. You don't owe me thanks, she replied. Just live well, that's enough. He hesitated. Will I see you again? She looked around her empty apartment, eyes distant. Maybe, one day. After the call ended, Jessica stared at the blank TV screen. Her reflection looked older than she remembered, the kind of tired that no sleep could fix. A week passed. She returned to work at the trauma unit wearing her scrubs, blending into the rhythm of alarms and sirens. The hospital was loud, alive, unpredictable, yet somehow it felt safer than silence. Here chaos had rules. She moved through corridors with quiet authority, steady hands, calm voice. Pressure here. Clamp that. Good. Next. Her staff followed her without question. To them she was Dr. Reeve, composed, brilliant, untouchable. They didn't see the tremor in her hands when she washed off the blood after each shift. They didn't know how her heart still raced when a helicopter passed overhead. At night she'd walk home through the empty streets, the hum of traffic in the distance, the smell of rain on concrete. She liked the rain, it muted the world. But the ghosts still followed. Some nights she dreamed of the boy she'd spared, the one in the compound, his terrified eyes, his trembling hands. She wondered what became of him. Did he run far enough? Did he live? Or did war find him again as it always did? On other nights, she saw her old team, 6 shadows in the sand, laughing in a world that no longer existed. And every time she woke, she'd whisper the same words, you made it, keep moving. One morning, as she scrubbed in for surgery, Hayes appeared in the doorway, out of uniform, wearing civilian clothes but still carrying that unmistakable edge of the field. Jessica froze mid-step. You tracked me down. Hayes smirked. Didn't take much, you're not exactly hiding. I'm not running either. Hayes nodded, leaning against the wall. You know, there's a rumor floating around the community. They're saying the ghost of Blackwater saved a bunch of hostages last month. Everyone's pretending not to know who it was. Jessica didn't look up. Rumors keep people guessing. I'm fine with that. Hayes crossed her arms. You could come back, you know, not the field, the advisory unit. Teach, train, use your experience. Jessica's hands stilled under the running water. The last time I taught people to fight, they didn't all come home. This would be different. Nothing's different, Jessica said quietly. Hayes sighed. You're not built for normal life, Jess. None of us are, but maybe teaching could help. You can't keep patching up bodies without patching your own. Jessica turned off the faucet, drying her hands with surgical precision. You think redemption comes from service. I think it comes from not wasting what you've learned. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Jessica said, I'll think about it. Hayes smiled faintly. That's all I wanted to hear. She left without another word. That night Jessica sat by the window, the city lights flickering below like fading stars. Hayes's words lingered. You can't keep patching up bodies without patching your own. Maybe she was right. Maybe all the saving in the world didn't mean much if she couldn't save herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, Fletcher stood there, same calm eyes, same easy smile. Heard the coffee's better here. Jessica exhaled, half laughing. You really can't stay out of classified company, can you? He shrugged. I was in town, figured I'd check on the legend. Legend's working double shifts and talking to ghosts. He stepped inside, scanning the neat apartment. You ever hang anything on the walls? She smirked. I like exits visible. He nodded approvingly, still the operator. For a few minutes they just sat. He watched her make tea. She watched the steam curl between them. The comfort was unspoken, two soldiers who didn't need to fill silence with noise. After a while he said, You did something important back there. You showed mercy when nobody would have blamed you for pulling the trigger. Jessica looked at him. You think it mattered? I think it mattered to the boy, and to you. She stared into her cup. It didn't feel like mercy, it felt like exhaustion. Same thing sometimes, he said. She gave a quiet laugh. You're getting philosophical in your old age. He smiled. You're one to talk, the woman who lectured an entire warlord on moral equilibrium. She rolled her eyes. That wasn't philosophy, that was stalling. He studied her face, the way the light softened her scars, the way fatigue lived behind her calm. You ever think about letting Viper 1 stay dead for good? Her eyes flicked to his. I've tried. And he keeps showing up. Fletcher nodded slowly. Maybe that's okay. Maybe Viper 1 isn't who you were. Maybe she's who you are when it matters most. Jessica thought about that for a long time. Then she said, And who am I when it doesn't matter? Someone who deserves peace, he said. The words lingered, gentle, dangerous. She looked down, voice barely above a whisper. I wouldn't know what to do with it. Maybe start by not apologizing for being alive. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was necessary. After a while, he stood. I'm heading back to D.C. They're talking about declassifying Blackwater, setting the record straight. Jessica raised an eyebrow. And what story will they tell? The one that deserves to be told, he said. About the medic who carried 73 civilians through a firestorm and still came back to save more. She shook her head. Don't romanticize it. He smiled sadly. I'm not, I'm remembering it. He started toward the door, then paused. You know that call sign, Viper 1, people think it means aggression, speed, precision. But it wasn't about that, was it? Jessica's voice softened. It was about patience. Snakes don't strike unless they have to. He nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time to stop striking, just breathe. And then he was gone. The door closed. The apartment felt smaller, quieter. Jessica stood by the window again, looking down at the city, cars moving like veins, lights flickering like pulse beats. She whispered to the night, breathe. And she did. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was waiting for the next battle. She was just existing, healing. Days turned into weeks. The hospital became routine again. Patients came and went. Life moved. One afternoon, while leaving work, Jessica paused at the nurse's station. A young intern, barely 22, was shaking after losing her first patient. Jessica walked over, resting a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. "You did everything you could." The intern's voice cracked. "It wasn't enough." Jessica met her eyes. "Sometimes it never is, but that's not failure, that's being human." The girl nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. As Jessica walked out into the fading sunlight, she realized something. She wasn't speaking to the girl. She was speaking to herself. Outside, the wind carried a faint smell of rain. The sky was bruised with storm clouds. She stopped at the corner, eyes lifted as the first drops fell, cool, cleansing. She let it fall across her face. The war inside her didn't end in a firefight. It ended here, in the rain, on a street no one would remember, where a woman once known as Viper One finally stopped running. She whispered to the storm, almost smiling, "Sometimes peace doesn't come when the war ends. It comes when you stop fighting yourself." The rain fell harder, and somewhere far away, the ghosts finally grew quiet. Why do the ghosts always return when things get quiet? It had been almost a year since the rescue. A year since she'd walked out of the desert and back into a world that still didn't quite know what to do with her. Dr. Jessica Reeve, Viper One to a past life that wouldn't die, had built something close to normal. She taught trauma response at a civilian medical training center near Quantico, a strange purgatory between two worlds. Half her students were paramedics, the other half former soldiers trying to relearn how to live without a weapon. The smell of coffee and antiseptic filled the hallways. The rhythm was familiar, grounding. "Remember," she told the class, holding a tourniquet in one hand, "you're not saving a patient, you're buying them time. Don't chase perfection. Chase the next breath." The room hung on her words. Her presence carried authority that couldn't be faked. Even when she wasn't trying, she commanded silence. After class, one of the younger trainees lingered. A woman, maybe 25, fit tense, eyes haunted by something she didn't say. "Dr. Reeve," she began, "can I ask, how do you stop thinking about it? The blood, the noise, the faces." Jessica met her gaze. "You don't," she said softly. "You learn to live beside them." The girl nodded, eyes wet, understanding more than she wanted to. Jessica watched her leave, that familiar ache tightening in her chest. She saw herself in every survivor she taught, a reflection of who she'd been, and who she might still become if she wasn't careful. That night she stayed late, cleaning up the simulation room alone. The overhead lights buzzed faintly. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Then her phone buzzed. No name, just a secure code string she hadn't seen in years. Her stomach sank. She answered, "Reeve." "Doc," came Fletcher's voice. Calm, too calm. "Sorry to do this to you. We've got a situation." Her pulse quickened. "Where?" "Not overseas. Stateside. Langley's asking for your consult. A unit went dark during a training exchange, military and civilian casualties. 2 survivors in critical condition, both requesting you by name." "By name," she repeated. "Who?" "Hayes," he said quietly, "and Rodriguez." Jessica's breath hitched. The room seemed to shrink. "Send location," she said. "Already did. Medevac en route to Walter Reed. They'll brief you there." The line went dead. For a long moment she stood motionless, the rain outside pounding harder. Then she grabbed her bag and walked out. Walter Reed Hospital, 4 hours later. The hallway smelled like bleach and blood. Jessica had walked these corridors before, but it felt different now. This wasn't the battlefield. This was home ground, and somehow that made it worse. Fletcher met her outside ICU 3. His face was lined, eyes red. "Hayes is in surgery. Rodriguez is stable, barely." Jessica's voice was low. "What happened?" "Joint counterterrorism training in Virginia. Civilian observers included. Someone hacked the targeting system in a live fire simulation. It wasn't an accident." Jessica frowned. Inside job. Fletcher hesitated. Looks that way. Someone fed data straight to the enemy during the exercise. It was supposed to be safe. She processed that, jaw tightening. And they think it's connected to Blackwater, don't they? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Jessica looked through the glass. Rodriguez lay in the bed, tubes running into his arms, half his face bandaged. A fighter stripped of his armor. Fletcher's voice softened. He's asking for you. She went in quietly. The heart monitor beeped slow, steady. Rodriguez turned his head when he heard her steps. His lips twitched into something like a smile. "Doc," he rasped, "you still make bad entrances." Jessica smiled faintly, sitting beside him. "And you still make bad choices." He coughed, the sound rough. "Guess I missed the gunfire." Her expression shifted. "What happened, Rico?" He swallowed hard. "We were running drills, system glitched, target drones locked on us instead, like they knew where we'd move. Hayes tried to override, got hit." Jessica's voice went cold. "Someone fed them our signatures." He nodded weakly. "And whoever did it, they knew about you. They used your old call sign in the breach protocol." She froze. "Viper 1. Fletcher stepped closer, his face darkening. "They're not just reviving the story, Jess. They're rewriting it. Someone's using your name to burn the field." For a moment she couldn't breathe. It was like the air had thickened. Rodriguez reached out with a trembling hand. "Don't chase it, Jess. Promise me. We're done chasing ghosts." Her eyes softened. "Rest, Rico, that's an order." He smiled faintly. "Yes, ma'am." He drifted off. Jessica stood there, watching the monitor's steady pulse, her reflection faint in the glass. The war she'd walked away from was calling her back, not with bullets, but with her own name. 2 days later, she was back in Quantico, not as a doctor, but as a consultant. Langley had classified the incident, but whispers spread fast. Someone inside was reviving defunct call signs and ghosting real operators under their identities, hacking ops, manipulating missions, and rerouting data to create chaos. Jessica sat in a small debriefing room. Fletcher, Morrison, and a few analysts stood around a flickering monitor showing intercepted messages. The words were simple, encrypted, chilling. "Viper 1 confirmed, Phase 2 in motion." Jessica's stomach turned. "That's not me." "We know," Morrison said. "But whoever it is has access to your entire operational archive, declassified in black." She folded her arms. "So what's the play?" Fletcher looked at her. "We need someone who understands how Viper 1 thinks." Jessica gave a bitter laugh. "You're asking me to hunt myself." Morrison's tone was grim. "We're asking you to stop whoever's wearing your shadow." She leaned back, eyes distant. "Any leads?" Fletcher hesitated. 1. The message originated from within a military academy network. We're narrowing it down. Jessica frowned. "A student?" He nodded. "Or someone teaching one." 2 nights later, Jessica sat alone in her office at the training center. The building was quiet, too quiet. Outside, thunder rolled, distant but steady. Her computer pinged, an incoming message from an untraceable source. It read, "Do you still believe mercy saves people?" Her pulse quickened. Another line appeared. "Because mercy is what makes you weak." Her hands stilled over the keyboard. She typed back, "Who are you?" No answer. Then one more message. "I'm the part of you that didn't die in Blackwater." The screen went black. Jessica stared at her reflection, her own face ghosted in the monitor. For a moment, she saw the woman she'd been, blood-stained, broken, burning. The difference was clear. That woman had survived through rage. This one was surviving through restraint. She shut off the computer, grabbed her jacket, and stepped outside into the storm. Rain pounded the pavement, lightning flashing across the base like strobe fire. She whispered to herself, "You're not real, you're just noise." but deep down she wasn't sure. The next day, she met Fletcher at a diner off Route 29, the kind of place built for truckers and secrets. He slid a file across the table. We traced the network breach to a training cluster, civilian-military hybrid. Guess where? Jessica's eyes scanned the page. Her expression hardened. My center. He nodded grimly. Someone in your own program is feeding live operational data to whoever's using your call sign. She sat back, tension rising. How long do I have before they act again? Less than a week. Jessica stared out the window. The reflection of neon lights shimmered across her eyes. Then we end it, quietly. Fletcher frowned. You sure you want to go back down that road? She looked at him, calm but resolute. This isn't about war anymore. It's about closure. He sighed. What's the plan? Jessica took a sip of her coffee, black, no sugar. Simple. Let them think Viper One's still alive. Fletcher smirked. She is. Not for long, Jessica said. That night she walked the empty training halls alone, lights dim, footsteps echoing. Every shadow felt heavier, every corner familiar. Somewhere inside these walls, someone was waiting, someone who thought they understood her. But what they didn't understand was simple. Viper One wasn't a weapon, she was a lesson. And lessons didn't die. They repeated until they were learned. She paused at the door to the main simulation lab, fingers brushing the keypad. For a second, she saw her reflection in the glass, the calm doctor, the haunted soldier, the woman in between. Then she whispered to herself, time to finish what I started. The door slid open. And somewhere in the dark, a voice waited, soft, cold, and familiar. Hello, Viper. Who are you when you come face to face with your own shadow? Jessica stood in the dim light of the simulation lab, the hum of machines low and constant. The room smelled faintly of ozone and metal, too sterile, too familiar. Rows of screens glowed against the dark, each one displaying fragments of her past. Tactical overlays, mission feeds, file codes marked Viper One. Every breath she took came out measured, controlled. Somewhere behind the screens, a figure moved, slow, deliberate. A woman's voice, smooth but sharp. You shouldn't have come alone. Jessica's voice stayed calm. You think I ever needed anyone? A figure stepped into the half-light. A woman, maybe 30, lean, uniform stripped of insignia. Her face, younger, but unmistakably shaped by someone who had studied Jessica too closely. Eyes cold, determined. The ghost she was hunting had a human form. I know everything about you, the woman said. Your missions, your choices, every hesitation, every mercy. You built a legend on restraint, that's your flaw. Jessica studied her. You're not me. I'm what you should have been. Jessica's tone hardened. Who sent you? The woman smiled faintly. Nobody. You did. The moment you chose compassion over control, the system saw weakness. I was born from that weakness, from your file, your tactics, your ghost record. They called me Viper 1A, I prefer Echo. Jessica's stomach turned. You're a replica. I'm the upgrade. The word hung heavy. Echo circled her like a predator. They made me study you, how you think, how you move. You hesitated in Blackwater. You hesitated in the compound. I won't. Jessica met her gaze. You think killing without conscience makes you stronger. It makes you hollow. It makes me useful, Echo said. Mercy doesn't win wars. Jessica took a step closer, her voice low. Mercy's what ends them. Echo's smirk faltered. Spare me the sermon, doctor. You traded your rifle for a scalpel and called it redemption. But deep down, you miss it, the hunt, the silence before the shot. Jessica's pulse stayed even. I miss the reason we used to fight, not the fight itself. Lightning flickered through the high windows. The storm outside mirrored the tension in the air. Jessica's eyes scanned the room. She saw what she needed, the core terminal, glowing faintly in the back. the hub that controlled the data breach. Echo followed her gaze, smirking. You think you can shut me down? You erase me, they'll just build another. Maybe, Jessica said, but not tonight. Echo raised her weapon, compact, suppressed. You can't stop what's coming. Jessica didn't move, neither could you. The silence stretched, then the shot rang out. Metal shattered, sparks flared. Jessica dove sideways as a bullet tore through a monitor beside her. She hit the floor hard, rolling behind a steel console. Echo moved like lightning, tactical, flawless. She wasn't lying, she had studied Jessica's every move. Still favor your left side when you dive, Echo taunted. You really are predictable. Jessica's hand closed around a wrench from the floor. She waited, counting heartbeats, breaths. Then she whispered, predictable doesn't mean unprepared. She threw the wrench across the room. It clattered loud, Echo turned toward the sound, and Jessica lunged. They collided hard, the gun skidding across the concrete. For a moment it was pure motion, training versus experience, instinct versus wisdom. Echo was faster, younger, but Jessica was quieter, more patient. Every movement she'd learned had been bought with pain. Echo caught her by the throat, pressing her against a console. You're outdated, old soldier. Jessica's voice came through strangled breath. And you're unfinished. She drove her knee upward, fast, brutal. Echo stumbled, grip breaking. Jessica swung her elbow, connecting with her jaw. The impact sent both of them sprawling. They hit the floor, panting, blood mixing with rainwater leaking from the ceiling. Lightning flashed again, illuminating their faces, two versions of the same ghost. Echo reached for the gun. Jessica kicked it away, sending it sliding under the servers. Stop, Jessica said, breath shaking. You don't have to do this. Echo laughed, but her eyes flickered, uncertainty creeping in. You don't get it. I was made to be you, but without your mistakes, I can't stop. You can, Jessica said softly. You're human, aren't you? Somewhere under all that programming you want to choose. Echo's expression faltered just a second. Then she snarled, raising a knife from her belt. Choice is weakness. She charged. Jessica sidestepped, grabbed her wrist mid-swing, twisted, the knife clattered to the floor. Echo lunged again, catching Jessica's shoulder, driving her into the console. Metal groaned under the impact. Jessica felt pain flare hot through her arm, but she held on. You're wrong, she gasped. Weakness isn't mercy. Weakness is forgetting why mercy matters. She shoved back, slamming Echo into the wall. The younger woman struggled, panting, her expression cracking, fury mixing with something like grief. Do you think I wanted this? Echo shouted. They built me from your failures. Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper, then stopped repeating them. For a second, Echo froze, eyes trembling, breath uneven. Jessica stepped back, slowly lowering her hands. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be their weapon. Echo's lip quivered, the knife still in her hand. If I stop, they'll erase me. Then be worth erasing, Jessica said quietly. The thunder outside roared. The air between them felt electric, fragile, final. Echo blinked, one tear, barely visible in the flicker of lightning. Then she turned the knife and drove it into the control hub. Sparks erupted, alarms screamed, the lights flickered violently. Jessica shielded her face as smoke filled the room. When the haze cleared, Echo was on her knees, bleeding from the sparks that had caught her side. Jessica dropped beside her. You'll be okay, stay with me. Echo's lips curved faintly. Now we're even. Jessica's voice trembled. You didn't have to. I did, Echo whispered. Someone had to end Viper 1. Her hand slipped from Jessica's grasp. The monitors went black. The hum of the servers died. For a long time, Jessica didn't move. She just sat there in the silence, holding the hand of the girl who wasn't her but somehow was. When Fletcher and the others arrived minutes later, they found her sitting in the wreckage, eyes open, expression unreadable. He crouched beside her. Jess. She looked up, her voice came soft. It's over. Fletcher glanced at the body. Who was she? Jessica's answer was almost a whisper, a reminder. A month later. The sky over Arlington was pale and quiet. Rows of markers stretched out like memory written in stone. Jessica stood by one of them, no name, no date, just a small inscription carved deep into the marble. For those who fought themselves to find peace. She placed a small metal object on the ground, the last surviving fragment of the coin she'd buried in the desert. Rest, she whispered. Footsteps approached. Fletcher, dressed in plain clothes, stopped beside her. They shut the program down, buried it for good this time. She nodded, eyes still on the stone. Good. He studied her for a moment. You could come back, teach officially. The next generation could use your voice. Jessica smiled faintly. They don't need my voice. They need to learn their own. He sighed. You're not done helping people, are you? She looked at him. I'll always help people, just not with a rifle. They stood there in silence, the wind moving softly through the grass. After a while he asked, what happens to Viper One now? Jessica's gaze softened. She goes quiet for good this time. Fletcher nodded, understanding. You deserve that. She gave him a small, tired smile. Maybe we all do. As he left, Jessica stayed behind, her hand resting lightly on the nameless grave. The air was cool, calm, the kind of peace she used to think didn't exist outside of death. But it did. It was just quieter than she expected. She looked up at the sky, soft blue, streaked with thin clouds. Her voice came low, steady. You don't kill ghosts, you learn to live with them. She turned, walking toward the parking lot, each step lighter than the last. The wind picked up, carrying her words away. And as the camera would fade, the shot lingering on the stone, the sunlight breaking through, her final voiceover would whisper. They called me Viper One, a name born from war. But I learned something they never taught us in the field. Sometimes strength isn't about who fires first. It's about who learns when to stop. Mercy doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The wind carried the sound of distant bells. Jessica Reeve, Viper One, walked away. Not as a soldier. Not as a ghost. But as someone finally, quietly free.